Hi everybody and welcome to SA Rugby Magazine, again with Mark Johain. Mark, let's get into the Free State Cheetahs.
Gaan ons hierdie dan Afrikaans doen, Kev?
Hoe was die naweek, Mark?
Baie goed gewees, self.
Goed, dankie. That's about the extent of my Afrikaans. But I certainly have an opinion on the Cheetahs, and I think that they're being, they've engaged with a lawyer, so they're expecting the vote this week, I think, to go against them. Everybody's clamoring now to go north. They've been in the north for the last 2 seasons, and they've acquitted themselves averagely, I think, But saying that, they have got an agreement in place, which I have not seen sight of, till 2023. And now they're looking to be replaced by one of the 4, they're expanding to a Super 16. We know the Kings are out, they're in financial distress. And with the Kings out, then it means that if they're going to put in the 4 top franchises, or supposed top 4 franchises, then the Cheetahs have to go out. How do we get to this state again?
Yeah, I mean, it's everyone loves the Cheetahs in this country. We keep on saying that unless you support the Cheetahs, everyone else's second favorite team. And I've always said that the people who love them the most are the Sharks, because it's normally, if they want to know how the Sharks are going to look next year, watch the Cheetahs this year, because they buy all the players.
Yeah.
It's their feeder system. So I see Rowan Pienaar has been very vocal to say nonsense. This is one of the strong rugby domains of South Africa. It's got the greatest schoolboy structure in Grey College. Shimla's University, always a strength. And then they just produce such wonderful players. So from an emotional...
Rassie's.
Rassie, learnt everything there as a player and as a coach, even though he's a dispatch boy originally. But they've got such a wonderful history, and they've really been dominant in the domestic competition for the last couple of years. And they acquitted themselves well. They were on hiding to nothing that first season because they went from Super Rugby straight into it. I expected them to do better in the next year, which surprised me that they didn't do. Emotionally, 100%, they have to be part of it. Commercially, I just don't see how they can be part of it. If you look at...
Am I being too romantic with the Cheetahs, Jay?
I think you are being, but I understand why you're being that romantic. And it's like, why can't they be accommodated? And I would understand if pro rugby in the UK and Europe is going to become something that's looked at like top 14 or the Premiership, it's got to have the 4 best South African sides. And traditionally, those 4 best South African sides in terms of Super Rugby have been the Sharks, the Stormers, the Bulls, and then the Lions. And the Lions more so because of the last 5 years that they've had. Pre that, there would be an argument, they're the ones who are out and the Cheetahs are in. We look at the quality players that are on the Cheetahs, they would be accommodated in one of those 4 regions, and they would be showcased and their talent would be there. There's this view within the Cheetahs fraternity that if we don't play in that big competition, rugby is dead in this area. I don't buy that, because you don't get 30,000 people to a test match in Bloemfontein. You struggle to get 10,000 people to their biggest Super Rugby games when they were playing there. So because of the nature of the kind of the geographics there, people come from afar to watch the game. There's never been this massive crowd support, and there's also never been huge commercial investment in them. They've had very good local sponsors.
Well, I imagine that Toyota's put in 30 million rand in sponsorship.
Yep.
I have no idea, but I mean, they're talking about 30 million rand, or they stand to lose 30 million rand. So I imagine that that's in sponsorship. It may not all come from Toyota, and may come from some of the other sponsors as well, but it's a lot of money, and I don't see Sorrow having that sort of money at their disposal to just buy them out of the tournament.
No, look, Toyota has been one of their kind of stalwart investors, and they're kind of aligned with kind of the Cheetahs brand
for years.
And it's, again, if South Africa has to go in to an expanded one, they want to go in and try and win this thing, and their top 4 teams being the top 5 or top 6. And even though it wasn't consistent with the Cheetahs and Kings when they first went into an expanded pro rugby, the key there is to play pro rugby and then to qualify for Europe, be it for the top competition, alternatively for the European Challenge Shield. That's where the money is, to play in the old Heineken Cup. That is what Free State are looking at, the Cheetahs are looking at and saying, why are we then going to be excluded and be punished? I think what SA Rugby is looking at is the commercial models and the commercial potency of each franchise, and the Cheetahs sit very much 5 out of 5.
Yeah, but Mark, for me, I understand what you're saying. If the Cheetahs are excluded, obviously, money tends to ease everyone's concerns. But it's only a short-term plug. I think if the Cheetahs are excluded from there, then every club other than the top 4 clubs in the country, every other club becomes a feeder team to them. And where does the investment come into those clubs to grow the game?
That would then be the responsibility of SA Rugby, okay? And I think that's when the Lions tour of next year becomes so big, and the success financially of that. And then that would be, you would have the privatization, if you're looking at into those 4 franchises, as we've seen with the Bulls, majority shareholding, which is a given, it has to happen. But you're not going to get privatization into 14 provinces and into...
But you might get it into 6 or 7 if there was a promotion relegation into the European, into potentially playing in the Heineken.
Well, what you're going to get is, at the moment, they're saying there's top 4 and they're established. If there's the hint of a promotion relegation, you may not get that investment into those 4. So they would rather go with a very strong investment into those 4, somehow look after the Cheetahs as a domestic franchise that will be playing in a Currie Cup structure of 7 teams, a strength versus strength structure. And then, yes, they are then feeder players into those 4 franchises and also into the national squad setup. And we kind of redefine the rugby landscape in this country and say...
So those clubs will always have to be funded by SARA then?
Yes, always by SARA, and also whatever broadcasting deals or investments that come through, that it would be proportional with what's in that franchise, what's in that province, and how do they then kind of... What's the drive? Is we want to develop 10 players here that could play in pro rugby, 5 of them potentially could play for the Springboks, play for the Blitzboks, or whatever the case may be. The romantic in me says always keep the Cheetahs in. I think we're on the same. We have the same argument there. But
well, the romantic and the moral high ground. If you've done a deal with somebody, they're until 2023. Honor your contract.
I do think they will certainly come from a position that COVID has changed everything. They would love to have honoured the contracts, because the talk originally was 2 more teams that were going to an expanded pro rugby, and that was going to be Griquas and Pumas, okay? Then they would have 4 teams in North, 4 teams in South, while they were kind of seeing out the Super Rugby contract. That's kind of all gone up in smoke because of COVID. So it's fast-tracked. Let's get those 4 best South African teams in there. What the Cheetahs are saying is that they potentially are one of the 4 best.
Yeah.
They've just won the Currie Cup. They've been dominant domestically. The counter from the franchise is you've won a Currie Cup because none of our players have been there.
Yeah.
We've been playing Super Rugby. So it's taking what was there previously and basically ripping it up and saying what is best going to benefit South African rugby in totality. The 4 strongest franchises in Europe and a strong domestic competition. And I don't see Free State being a part of those 4 strongest ones there. And I still think that will be important to the South African game. But the compensation has to come from SARA.
But it's gonna need to be massive compensation, because if all of a sudden they're not being, it's all about television and exposure for the brands and everything else. But the Cheetahs have a fair point. You can only play the teams in front of you. And yes, if the investment goes into those top 4 teams, excluding the Cheetahs, then the Cheetahs will always be off the back foot. But if the Cheetahs are included in that Pro 16 in the Pro 16 and have an opportunity to compete in Europe, then you may get the investment in the Free State in terms of rugby from a professional point of view.
Look, again,
I know if my aunt had balls, she'd be my uncle, but
yeah. And if the Cheetahs were playing out of Cape Town, they'd be playing in Super Rugby or Pro Rugby in that. If you look at their history in Super Rugby and you look at their short history in Pro Rugby, I don't think it's mattered where they've played or how successful they've been in terms of their commercial value. And a lot of that funding has then come from SA Rugby and the broadcasting deals. And I think when SA Rugby is looking at it from a futuristic point of view, they don't see the growth in that area commercially and financially. They do see the growth from a talent perspective, and the investment would have to be in that, as opposed to trying to make and help make this a strong, commercially driven franchise. And the privatization that they're looking at is very consistent with the bigger centres, the metropolitan centres, and also the bigger teams. And that does unfortunately exclude the Cheetahs. But yeah, I would love it if they could develop a system and it's Pro Rugby becomes Pro 18 and it's 5 South African teams. And the Cheetahs are one of them. They would always be competitive there. I just think that South African rugby is saying that the drain on them having to have 5 teams in there would be more excessive than if they kind of put a proportionate amount of investment into the Cheetahs as a domestic team, not one of the international teams.
So what do you think is going to happen?
I think the Cheetahs will be out. There will be a lot of talk about court cases, and I think ultimately some form of sanity will suffice, and there will be a trade-off somewhere to getting the Cheetahs some form of financial compensation. You may find a few more test matches going there as well to Bloemfontein, and that there's some kind of revenue stream made up for it there. I think Rassie is in a catch-22. He wants to give back so much to the region that was so good to him, but I think he also understands the financial realities. So it's going to be a balancing act. But I don't think it's going to do the game any good if this thing goes to court. And we are so united, and the whole SA Rugby theme is stronger together. So it's going to take a lot of maturity and a lot of financial kind of composure to try and find a win-win situation for everyone in this. And hopefully they can.
Well, hopefully we can. It'll be a transparent process, and we can understand it, so
Yeah.
we can explain it to people.
No, indeed. But yeah, in a romantic, ideal world, definitely the Cheetahs in. In the current climate, I don't see them being there. But let's hope it can be resolved amicably.
Let's hope so. Thanks, Mark, for your input.